Hello and welcome. Hey, I'm thrilled to have you back with me. I'll tell you what, this is going to be fun. This is the second part of the three-part training series that you are engaged in here. And this is where we really get to the heart of the matter, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you what you need to do to find these incredible deals at deep discounts so that you can buy them right, so you can set yourself up with enough advanced equity right out of the gate, so that as the property improves in terms of its equity position over the next 5 to 7 years, you can sell half of them off, pay for the other half, and get 10 homes paid for in the next 5 to 7 years. You see, in Renatus, what we really want to do is we want to teach you. We want to show you how to earn $1 million, how to save $1 million. We want to show you how, to invest millions profitably, to give millions, because you got to give back, and then to inspire others to do the same, creating a domino effect that's going to help everybody. The one thing that I've learned over the years, though, is that there's too many limiting beliefs holding individuals back. Years ago, we did a survey, and we brought in a number of folks for a focus group, and we said, okay, you want to invest, you're all in the game, or you want to be in the game, what's holding you back? And these are the responses that we were given. We were told that individuals couldn't invest because they just didn't really know how and they lacked the knowledge. All right? Okay, that's one of the givens. There was another group who said, man, I'd invest, but I just don't have the time to go out and make it happen. The other group said, well, I would do it, but I just don't have any money, I don't have any credit, so those are the things that are holding me back. And then one thing that kind of, overshadowed all of those individuals on our focus group was this: fear. Fear. Now, fear is an acronym. It stands for false evidence appearing real, and that's just what these folks were dealing with. They were allowing those kinds of excuses to hold them back because of their limiting beliefs. They were thinking small. They didn't have a wealthy mindset. And you remember from the first training, we talked a little bit about that and how wealth is truly a mindset. So let's take a look at this belief window diagram, and let's kind of give you an idea. You see, every person on the planet has 4 basic emotions that they need to meet the needs of, and that is variety. We all need variety. I mean, the same old thing on a regular basis will drive us nuts. We need to feel significant or important. We need to love and feel love. We also need to feel safe. And those are the 4 basic emotional needs that we each and every one of us have. Well, understanding that's important, because when we take a look at our needs, we always have to say whether or not the beliefs we've established are meeting our needs. So let's walk through this little diagram together. We all see the world through what we call our belief window. That's the way we view the world, our perception, and our perception creates our own reality. Well, based on our belief window and the way we see the world, we will then set up what we call rules, if-then statements. If somebody says, well, I believe that the real estate market stinks and that it's never going to come back and individuals are going to stop buying houses and they're going to start living in cardboard boxes, if that's their belief window, then they're going to set up rules to support that. And those if-then rules are going to be, so I will never own a home, I will never invest in property, I will never do those kinds of things. I'm going to scout out my spot in the park for my cardboard box. And that modifies their behavior, which brings about certain results. You have to always examine your belief window, because if you get caught in this limiting belief trap, in this attitude of scarcity, it'll take you out of the game before you ever start. If you find yourself every time opportunity approaches you, you're talking to yourself and saying, yeah, but, listen, it's time for you to get the but out of the way. Now, sometimes you got to get the B-U-T out of the way, and other times you got to get the B-U-T-T out of the way. But hopefully this little diagram on a belief window will help you to re-examine just whether or not you are satisfying your emotional needs. Look for feedback. Now, as an example of what I'm talking about, how in this country the only thing that really divides the wealthy from the poor is what they put into their mind and then what they choose to do with it, I'd love for you to meet one of our students in Renatus. He's a wonderful individual. He came here from the islands of Tonga when he was just 10 years old, didn't speak the language, but he came to America because he wanted the life that everyone dreams of. His name is Charles Jose, and he's got a powerful story, especially when it comes to what he's been able to do with our education in terms of investing. If he can do it, you can do it too. Let's give a look at Charles.
You know, what's really amazing when my wife and I were presented an opportunity to actually participate in an event, to actually see whether or not real estate was the area for us to create wealth. And not having been involved in real estate previously, what was really interesting was the fact that we saw an opportunity that if a community could actually rally around us and help us, that at least if we can get our first deal or so getting going on that, that would help us out. And so we felt comfortable with that. What was interesting is the fact that our first deal was a subject to. When we went through it, you know, I mean, coming from the social service industry, if we had to do that on our own, I think I would have I'm scared to death. But what we had, I called up one of the community members in Salt Lake City, and he assisted us with our first deal. It was $75,000 in equity on that first deal. On a subject to, we were able to get into the deal with no money down. And that was just really exciting to us. And so my wife and I set a goal that if we were able to do 10 deals our first year, that we would actually take a trip. And what was interesting is that we were able to reach our first 10 deals within 8 months. We were able to take our first trip around in the South Pacific, went out to Tahiti, went out to a beautiful island called the Marquesas, spent 10 days out there, and it was just phenomenal because we realized that this was achievable, it was reachable, it was something that we realized that the education with a combination of having a community of investors with the same like mindset, it was easier for us to actually accelerate our effort, that it wasn't something that we had to do over a 10-year period, but we were able to do so within our first 8 months of getting on board. And so that was really an exciting achievement for us, and as well as an accomplishment, having come from a part of our lives to where we were not comfortable at all in getting into real estate investing. It wasn't an area that we had ever done before, but getting into now an area to where we can create wealth in a different industry with the possibility of creating wealth on a passive basis, that was exciting for us.
I love listening to Charles's story because he's such an inspiration to so many people. And you know what? The only thing that separates Charles from everybody out there who doesn't take action is that, you know, he made a decision a long time ago that whatever it was going to take, he was going to do. It's simply put, that's it. So we want to move forward to helping you build a plan of attack so that you can take action just like Mr. Hosea did. First of all, you got to determine what you want. Then, because there's sacrifices that need to be made, you got to determine what you're willing to give up to get it. Then, you know, what is your plan going to involve? In other words, how are you going to go about it? You also need to define your investing criteria, your home type, your zip code, and so forth, and where you see the market going in your own particular area, because real estate is not a national business. Real estate is very much localized. So figure out what's going on in your own market. Do the research. You also need to determine what resources are needed and where you're going to find them. See, there's a lot of folks who say, well, I don't have it in my bank account, my credit score is not going to cut it, and I don't know how to fix houses, I don't know how to rehab, I don't know how to do these different things. So what? Doesn't matter. You don't have to do it, you just have to lead it. Remember the principle of OP, other people, other people's efforts, other people's time, other people's ideas, other people's resources. Folks, it's all about that. So make sure that you're building a solid team and you will never have to worry about those resources. Then, you know, I would advise you need to find a mentor. Find out who's your mentor going to be. Ask yourself that question and start looking for that individual. And trust me, as you look, they will manifest themselves. And then you've got to ask the big question. Do you have what it takes? At the end of the day, do you have what it takes? I can tell you this, after teaching and training literally tens of thousands of budding entrepreneurs, real estate investors, business owners over the years, the ones who succeed always have this in common. They have developed a deep down burning desire to succeed, and they refuse to allow anyone to take that away from them. I would suggest that you learn how to do the same. I love this quote by N.W. Murray. Back in 1951, he led an expedition to the Himalayas from Scotland. And he was quoted as to say this. He says, until one is committed, there is hesitancy. The chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Listen, until one's committed, there's hesitancy. That means that when you've made a decision, you cut yourself off from all other options. You move forward to success. Don't just, put your toe in the water. If you really want success, you need to immerse yourself in what we're sharing with you here, and you need to get into the market and start taking action. Because after all, thought really is your only currency. And again, I truly believe that the only thing that separates the wealthy from the poor in this country is what they put into their mind and then what they choose to do with it. So you need to be about the business of improving you. So let's examine the details of a transaction, because the very first thing that you've got to do is you've got to locate wholesale real estate opportunities. The next thing is that you've got to build a property profile and you got to pre-screen the seller. Now, when you pre-screen the seller, that means you got to ask them questions about their situation and what's going on with them. Why are they selling? What's going on in their life? Because you're looking for distressed sellers, not particularly distressed property, but distressed sellers. Find out what financial stress they're dealing with in their life, because real estate is a people business. It's all about your ability to work with and to, how do I put it? How to solve problems. So whenever anybody asks you what business you're in, you can say, I'm in the problem-solving business. Now, what you need to do from there is that as you find their pain, you need to look for solutions to their pain, and that'll help you to construct an offer. The next thing is you've got to be able to verify property value. Absolutely have to know how to verify the value of a property in your given area in this day and age, because things have changed. I'm telling you, everything's a little bit different today. So if you're not up to speed on the comparables of common properties in your area that you would be investing in, you've got to get up to speed, because everybody sees property valuations just a little bit differently. For instance, here's the home as seen by yourself. Here's the home as seen by your lender. This is the home as seen by your buyer. Here's the home as seen by your appraiser. And heaven forbid, here's the home as seen by your tax assessor. Obviously, you can see some difference between the different examples there, but that's kind of, we like to do a little tongue-in-cheek, but that's a lot of how people perceive, different properties and different valuations. Understand the property values in your area. Now, you're going to need to get comparables, which means you're going to need to have access through a real estate agent or through an appraiser or title company or someone to give you some access to the MLS so that you can pull comparables. That will help you immensely, because it's the most accurate approach that you can use. But the other thing is this. There's one way, as a rule of thumb, that you can get a good handle on where things are at. That is, you're going to start looking at properties on a regular basis. And in doing your research, you're going to want to make sure that you look at least 10 or 15 homes in the common size, neighborhood, bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, and so forth. And then here's what's cool. Now what you'll do is you'll find out what those properties are selling for. You take all the sell prices and you write them down and you add them up. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take the total square footage of each house, and you're going to add all the square footage up together with the total price of all those homes that have sold. Now you're going to average the total square footage by the total price sold of all those homes added up to come up with an average price per square foot. And I'm here to tell you, when you're dealing with homes that are $200,000 and below, depending on the market that you're in, you're going to be able to find that the comparable approach based on square footage is pretty accurate, and it's going to give you a good handle so you can make a fast buying decision. So, learn how to verify property value. Here's the next thing you need to do. You got to make sure the numbers work. Man, if the numbers don't work, don't do the deal. There's an old saying in the industry that says this: fall in love with the deal, not in love with the property. The next is you're going to start negotiating agreement. Now, when you negotiate agreement, it's all about finding out what the situation is for the seller. What are their consequences to not achieving agreement? What's the downside for them? What's the problem that they're dealing with? You need to craft a solution. And then as you make offers, you need to be able to prepare and sign contracts. Now listen, don't get all caught up and nervous about signing a contract on an offer that you've made. Just make sure that you have stipulated in there some conditions for the purchase of the property. Now, the best way for you to do that is you're going to put in at least a 10-day inspection window. Most folks will agree to that without even blinking an eye. And if you put in there 10 days to inspect the property, and then you make sure that the language in your contract says that so that you can determine whether the property meets your needs, you won't have any problem if that deal doesn't turn out to be the one you're looking for, of backing out and not being caught in a situation where you still have to move forward to purchase. The next thing is you can open escrow. Now, a lot of folks say, well, open escrow. Hey, if I'm trying to do no money down deals, is there even an escrow to open? Sure there is, because you got a purchase contract and you're going to want to be able to cloud title. So there's nothing wrong with you throwing your contract or your agreements into escrow. The next thing is you got to satisfy all contingencies. That happens during that 10-day inspection period. Make sure that the contingencies are satisfied before you move ahead with the deal. If it doesn't smell right, if it doesn't look right, if it doesn't feel right, or if all of a sudden you discover that there's a whole lot more expense to making this deal profitable, it's time for you to back out and go find another deal. Now, there's a few ways for you at this point in the real estate transaction to make money. You can do what we call an option on the contract. Now, an option is an interesting thing. That's where someone is willing to pay cash in advance. You may be willing to pay the seller a little bit of money up front so that they open up a window of time for you to purchase the property where they'll sell it only to you and to no one else. That's an option. So you can put down a few $100 or a few $1,000 depending on the deal, and you can write into it a 3-month option, 6-month option, whatever you can get away with to buy yourself the time so that you can go out and find a buyer for that property to come in and move you out of the property with a quick exit strategy. It may be that rather than taking title to the property, you just want to assign the contract to somebody else. That's certainly a great way to make some money as well. And in both of these, you can make a nice lump sum cash return. If you're going to assign the contract, that means that the contract has to be assignable. You need to make sure that where you have put your name as the purchaser, you've also put behind that and/or assigns. As long as you've done that, you have a guaranteed purchase date and a guaranteed purchase price, and it's an assignable contract. That means that you can actually sell your rights to that property, your rights to purchase that property. And without ever taking title, without ever putting money into the deal, you now have the opportunity to make literally thousands of dollars when you find the right buyer. The next thing that happens, well, after taking a look at seeing whether all the contingencies are satisfied, you can cancel the contract if it doesn't meet your needs, or you can close on the transaction. Now, if you close on the transaction, that opens up another window of opportunity for you because you're going to do one of three things. Number one, you're going to take a look at this property and say, I want this to be a rental property. So I want to build passive income over time. I'm going to close on the property. I'm going to bring in long-term financing, and I'm going to own this thing for the long haul. It may be that you say, I'm going to retail this property. In other words, I'm going to fix it up, I'm going to do some rehab, and I'm going to move it for a nice lump sum cash return. Or it may be that you want to wholesale the property. Now, when you wholesale the property, all you got to do is find another investor who's not as good as you are at finding deep discounted properties. Because if you know how to buy them right, you'll always find somebody to purchase them from you. So wholesaling is the fastest way from start to money in this industry, and that's where you need to get acquainted with the other investors in your market and just simply have a conversation with them. And that conversation goes something like this. Hey, listen, I'm an investor as well. I saw your signs, I saw your ad. I understand you're out there looking for deals. Every once in a while, I trip over the deal of a lifetime, but I just don't have the time or the resources at that moment to do with it as I want to and to fix it up and sell it retail. If I find a deal like that where it's got a lot of room in it for you to make a great profit, would you like me to give you a call? And that's how you build a buyer's list of investors for wholesaling property. Well, folks, these are the details of a transaction, and you've got to be familiar with this chart so that you have a good understanding as to all of the opportunity that is there for either lump sum cash returns on a deal or to build passive income over time. So now that we've talked about the details of a transaction, let's talk about becoming a master of the six. A master of the six most important fundamental areas of real estate. If you learn how to become a master of these 6 areas, I'm here to tell you, you can write your own paycheck when it comes to real estate investing. You got to learn how to find them, how to fund them, how to fix them, tenant them, manage them, and sell them. And if you become an expert in each of these areas, I'm telling you, you're going to score and score big. So let's discuss first and foremost how to find wholesale buying opportunities. The thing that you're looking for, rather than looking for distressed property, although sometimes that's an indication of the seller's financial distress, what you're really looking for is you're looking for distressed sellers. The need to sell versus the want to sell. Now here's a few things that motivates a private seller to trade equity for peace of mind. Number one, can't afford the payments. Divorce could be a situation. Might have been that they just lost their job or that they've been transferred to a new location and they've got to move, or they've already moved and now they're in a really tough spot because they're making 2 mortgages. It could be that you're dealing with addiction problems or a landlord who's just simply tired of dealing with tenants. They might have tax problems. It might be death or medical hardship. Now those are some of the things that affect a private seller. But here's the thing you got to remember. In this day and age, the most motivated sellers out there in the entire country are many times institutional sellers. That's right, they're banks and mortgage companies and credit unions. See, and the reason why they're motivated is because they've got too many foreclosures in the process, or there's too many REO properties that are actually in their inventory. They're losing money holding properties. Now they're losing money not just because they're sitting on a whole lot of non-performing paper. They're losing money because the longer a property stays vacant without a homeowner to care for it, the more it has a tendency to deteriorate, the more it's susceptible to vagrants, to vandalism, and just to general, wear and tear. So they're losing money holding properties. The other thing is their asset to liability ratio is negatively weighted, and that can affect their standing with the banking commission. The banks are required to keep a certain amount of money. Generally, it's somewhere between $3 to $7 in non-interest bearing account for every single property that they have and hold in their REO department. So they don't want your property. No, banks are in the business of making money from their money, not from real estate. So there's some motivation on their part to make sure that they move these properties and get them off the books. The other thing to remember is that the central bank decreases the bank's borrowing power. And if all of a sudden everything is weighted negatively to liabilities versus assets, that's when the FDIC starts to investigate the bank's viability, and they could come in and take them over. So banks do not want to have property on the books. They can carry and they can bear the burden of a certain amount, but once they move beyond that, they become some of the most motivated sellers in the entire industry. So when we talk about the need to sell versus want to sell, you've got to understand what I refer to as CONA. CONA, C-O-N-A-A. It stands for consequences of not achieving agreement. In other words, what's the pain? What's the problem? Find the consequences. Then find and craft a solution. The next thing that you've got to focus on is presenting justifiable offers, and I mean justifiable. There's too many folks that just go out there and think that they can just lowball offer, lowball offer, lowball offer, and they're going to get rich off of real estate. Every once in a while, you trip over somebody who's so motivated that they'll accept one of those lowball offers. But most of the time, even when you're dealing with banks, especially when you're dealing with banks, you have to make your offer justifiable. You got to back it up with comps. You got to back it up with, good, solid information on what's going on in the area. And you got to help the bank understand why it is in their best interest to sell you this home at this price and why that price is justifiable. If you don't have the documentation, they're not going to sell you the house. Then it comes down to this, selling the seller. Selling the seller. I've always said that if you're not selling, you are being sold. So whose signal is stronger when it comes to this conversation? Make sure you're prepared. And then, of course, closing the agreement is the next step. Now, when we talk about finding good deals, there's a number of different areas you want to look, whether you're looking for a motivated private seller or you're looking for a motivated institutional seller. Focus on foreclosures, use advertising to go out there and find these different opportunities. You can look on the internet, networking, for sell by owners, rentals, the MLS, anyway, expired listings. You can go on and on and on. But in each of these cases, you're looking for motivated people who must sell, not just who want to sell. Now let's talk about a foreclosure. What is a foreclosure? Well, a foreclosure is when a real estate lender or lien holder takes title to the property away from the borrower or owner because of either non-payment or non-performance of an agreement. That's what a foreclosure is. Where do you find them? Well, I listed some of the different ways for you to find those deals, but let's focus on just a few here. Advertising. Advertising, you can put ads out there, you can put roadside signs out there, you can start to distribute literature, and I'm telling you, you can have motivated sellers find you. You can put ads in the newspaper, or you can be looking for good deals in the paper. Individuals who say they got a handyman special, those are generally an investor looking to wholesale a property. Or it may be that somebody is so desperate they're saying, you know, my loss is your good fortune, come get this one. You want to check those things out. Foreclosure list services, there's plenty of those, but here's what I would encourage you to do. If you're looking at foreclosure list service, make sure that it's an accurate, current list. The next thing is you can go to the internet, but the most accurate is, hey, go to the notice of default or Liz Pendens lists that are at your county recorder or city hall. Now, some of you are going to be in a deed of trust state, and some of you are going to be in a mortgage state. If you're in a deed of trust state, you're looking for a notice of default. If you're in a mortgage state, you're looking for a Liz Pendens. That's a Latin term that literally means lawsuit pending. Go to the county recorder or city hall and get a fresh list. Now, if you don't want to be always running down there, well, there's another way to do it. Most of these recorders are now online, and they will furnish that information to you if you set up an online account with them. Next thing is go to title companies. Hey, listen, my title company sends me over lists every single week for Davis County, Salt Lake County. I mean, I get hundreds and hundreds of foreclosure opportunities every single week. Another thing you might want to do is check out trustee websites or newsletters that they're publishing so that they will give you an idea as to the auctions that are coming up, and that'll tell you what properties are in foreclosure right now. As you're finding good deals, remember networking is key. Let people know that you're in the real estate business. Make sure that they're aware of that. Network. Check the MLS. Get yourself some good real estate agents or real estate brokers on your team, especially REO agents. Make friends with these folks and make sure that you can perform on your commitments so that they want to continue to bring you good deals. You can go to the bank REO department. Now, most of the time, you're not going to have a whole lot of luck talking to those folks because they take anything that is a sellable or what they consider to be sellable, and they move it through their REO agents and brokers. So they put it on the MLS. But there are those really sweet deals that if you build a relationship with a bank, especially with the REO department, they'll give to you as an investor because they're properties that are pretty beat up and worn. They're not really sellable in the retail market. They need us to come in and take those properties off their hands so that we can renovate them and bring them back into, the housing market. Also, private auctions. Right now, there's a ton of private auctions. You need to search for those in your area, and you need to get good at the game of making offers. But you've got to set your bid limit because you do not want to get emotion in the way and move beyond what you should be paying for a property. Same thing goes for a public auction, whether it's a sheriff's sale or it's a deed of trust sale. There's two types of foreclosures, two types. You got judicial and non-judicial. We've already mentioned those just a little bit because there's two types of documents. A mortgage document is simply an agreement between a borrower and a lender. Borrower and a lender. It's recorded, it shows evidence of debt and the collateral. It has a note that shows a promise to repay. Sometimes we call that the promissory note. There's also a different kind of document, a deed of trust. It's literally a trust document, and it's an agreement between three parties. You got the trustor, you got the trustee, and you got the beneficiary. Now, you become the trustor if it's your property. The trustee is appointed by the beneficiary, or the trust, I should say, to act in behalf of the beneficiary, who is generally the bank. Trustees are generally attorneys or someone of that stature. Now, in a trust, there's a deed of trust. It's recorded, it shows evidence of debt and collateral, and it also has a promissory note attached to it. The one thing that's cool about a deed of trust, though, is this. It has a little phrase in it called the power of sale clause. And the power of sale clause gives rights to the lender to actually sell the property for compensation when the borrower defaults. So again, remember, the difference between a mortgage and a deed of trust is simply one requires the lender to actually file a lawsuit and take them to court to take the property back through foreclosure. The other, it just happens automatically. The minute somebody defaults on their loan or their agreement, the trustee has the power appointed by the trust to go down to the county courthouse and to file a notice of default and to have that recorded and start the foreclosure process. Now, in every area, the foreclosure sequence is generally somewhat similar, but the time stamps associated with it and the timelines are different. This is where you need to do some research in your own market. Generally, there's a delinquency notice that's followed by the notice of default or some sort of a notification that there's a lawsuit pending on a lis pendens. You're going to have, a lot of times, a reinstatement period. In other words, the reinstatement period is where you and I as investors really live and breathe, because during that period of time, we don't have to pay off the mortgage to stop the foreclosure. All you need to do is bring it current to stop the foreclosure. Next is a date of publication. You know, most areas are, the lender has to publish in a newspaper in the area where the property is going to be sold 2 weeks, 3 weeks, sometimes 4 weeks or 5 weeks before the actual auction. And they've got to have their publication dates established. The next thing is there's going to be a date of sale when it actually goes to auction. And then in some areas, you might deal with a little bit of a redemption period. What a redemption period is this: if the original borrower can come up with the money that you purchased the property for at the auction, then they can buy you out, pay you reasonable interest, and they can take the property back. That happens so rarely, it's not even funny. But it's something you need to be aware of, because you don't want to be going into a full-blown, all-out rehab on a property and then have the original borrower come back and say, hey, guess what? I got the money together, this one's mine, because they don't have to recoup you for any of those additional rehab costs. They only have to pay you interest and what you bought it for at auction. The next is this, a deficiency judgment. Sometimes you got to educate folks a little bit about that, because a deficiency judgment means that the lender has the right to go and sue for deficiency if they didn't make back what they originally loaned on the property. And then that falls to the responsibility of the borrower. So you need to educate your borrowers about those things. But again, that's one of those deals where it hardly ever happens, just because lenders don't want to throw good money after bad, because they know that they can't squeeze blood out of a turnip, so to speak. In all of this, you've got to get acquainted with the negotiation process. I love this little chart because it spells it out better than anything I've ever seen. It talks about CONA, consequences of not achieving agreement. Now, there's consequences of not achieving agreement for the seller as well as for the buyer. That's the cool thing about it. When using this chart, you've got to assess individuals' wants and needs, and you need to focus on the area of agreement. That's where the negotiation really takes place. You know, if they're dealing with a lot of pain, then you have more power in the negotiation. If you're dealing with a lot of deals and this one is just another out of many, you have more power in the negotiation. But find out what the consequences are, so that as you identify their problem, you can help to solve their problem. Now, the money in the market is really in 4 areas right now: foreclosures, short sales, auctions, and REOs. I want to talk about foreclosures to begin with, and I want to start by helping you understand that, again, when you're dealing in the foreclosure market, you are looking for a motivated private seller. Some of the challenges they have is they're going to lose their home, they're going to lose their dignity, they're going to lose any equity they may have in the property if they have it, and their credit's going to be destroyed. Something to remember: a foreclosure on your credit rating weighs heavier against you than bankruptcy. Bankruptcy. So folks don't want to go down that path, and you can help them out, even if it means stopping the foreclosure short of the auction date because you reinstate the loan, or negotiating a short sale with the lender, because then on their credit, instead of a foreclosure, it actually shows that, you know, they worked for a settlement. I'm going to give you a quick example of what a subject to deal looks like. Remember that one I talked about earlier in the training where I got the home for free, hung on to it for 9 months, and then made a $63,000 profit off a free house? This is how I did it. Now, most folks are not going to give you their house for free, but those deals do make themselves available. Most of the time what individuals are looking for is they're looking for some sort of cash benefit for handing the title of the property over to you. So as we examine this, let's kind of keep in mind where the retail market is and where you're going to buy the property at. Let's say we got a nice little 3-bed, 2-bath house here, but it's in foreclosure. Now, the retail value on the market today, if somebody can wait to find the buyer and if they're not in foreclosure, in this example is $260,000. But let's say their mortgage is at $190,000. Now, there's some equity in there. You know, you're looking for a nice equity spread. You got $70,000 to work with on this deal. The default amount, meaning how far they're in arrears to the bank with interest and penalties and foreclosure expenses, is $5,000. That means all you got to do is come up with $5,000 for the bank and you can stop the foreclosure and reinstate the loan. Let's say that the owner wants a little equity. They want you to purchase their equity, but they're willing to give it to you at a huge discount, because if you don't buy the house, this house is going to auction, they're going to get zero, and they're going to have a foreclosure on their credit rating. You purchase the equity for $5,000. This is just an example. In this example, that means you've only got $10,000 into the deal. You got a mortgage of $190,000. You're going to have the original borrower keep that in place, and you're going to start making the mortgage payments. So you're going to use their credit on that deal. No need to get a new loan. You purchase the property. Your wholesale purchase price is $200,000. Now, in today's market, I can tell you this: if you get greedy, you're gonna get slaughtered. You are. It's not going to work for you. There are tons of buyers in today's market, but what those buyers are looking for is they are looking for a smoking great deal. So you're going to sell this property short of what its valuation is for a quick sale. If it's worth $260,000, sell it for $230,000. That means you got to make sure the numbers work at $230,000. But if you sell it for $230,000, here's the good news. I mean, you can find a buyer just like that, and you can turn a nice little profit. In this example, you'd make a $30,000 profit. $30,000, you're going to get the $10,000 back that was put into the property. Now you're going to make a $30,000 profit. The return on that $10,000, your return on investment, is 300%. 300%. Now, how many of you like a 300% return rather than what savings is paying right now? It's amazing. And there's another way to make even more money on the deal. That is, use somebody else's credit, use somebody else's money, so you put zero into the transaction, but you still pull a $30,000 profit. That's when your ROI moves to the infinite column, an infinite rate of return. Nothing in, nothing at risk, but you get a huge return. Infinite. It's beautiful. Let me give you the tip of the day. The tip of the day is this: if a seller demands their price, you got to get your terms. If they demand their terms, you have got to get your price. Now, what does that mean? Well, here's what I'd like to suggest. Is that, let's say that in the example that I just gave you, the borrower comes back, the seller comes back and he says, hey, you know what, $5,000 is just not enough. It's just not. What I'd really like to do is I need to get a little bit more. Can you give me $7,000? If you can give me $7,000, then I will sell you the house. You bring the mortgage current, and I'll just walk away from the deal with $7,000 in my pocket. That's a negotiating opportunity for you, because they've just changed the deal. They come back with that kind of an offer. You can say, you know what, I'll tell you what, I will entertain that thought, and I'll give you your $7,000. But if I give you your $7,000, then we're going to have to break it up a little bit over time. I'll give you the full $7,000, but I'll give you $3,000 now, and I'll give you another $4,000 when I sell the house. But you can have your total of $7,000. Either that, or you can have your $5,000 all up front right now. In 99% of the cases, the seller is going to take the cash in hand today. But it gives you some buying power. And if they decide to take the $7,000 over time, the terms work out to your advantage so that you get a higher rate of return and you're in the driver's seat. Remember the tip of the day. Well, now that we talked about foreclosures, we're going to get into short sales. I want to help you understand what a short sale is all about. You see, a short sale is nothing more than a lender's agreement to discount on what is owed to allow the sale of a property prior to a foreclosure auction. That's all that it is. They're going to discount the mortgage payoff to make it attractive for someone to buy the property so they don't have to take it back into REO inventory and run the risk of losing more money. Why do banks accept a short sale? Well, I just gave you one reason, but generally on average, they're going to lose between 20 and 40% when they take a property back. So they can discount 20 to 40% below market value to create room for you and I to go in and snatch these properties up at a huge discount. Now, there's something you need to understand about banks. If you're making offers at the bank, you've got to make a justifiable offer. Don't just think you can throw in offers. That's what a lot of people do on a short sale, and they get so disappointed. You got to make sure that you've done your homework and that you are really in the driver's seat on this deal. Why will a homeowner or a seller agree to a short sale with an investor? A lot of times it's the only option they have to avoid foreclosure, to avoid the property being sold at auction. And a lot of times they just need somebody to help them through a tough situation. But like I mentioned before, a foreclosure on your credit rating weighs heavier against you than bankruptcy. But if you can negotiate with the lender for a settlement, Man, that does so much to help you repair your credit so much faster. So it's a real win-win for you, for the bank, and for the homeowner. Now, when's a home going to be considered for a short sale? When is a lender going to consider it? That's when the homeowner's behind on their payments or the loan is already in default. And they will take a cash offer to close quickly because they don't want to take the property back. Who's going to discount? Now, when we talk about short sales, it's not just the principal lender that will discount. Banks that are holding a second or a third mortgage, of course, with the first mortgage, those individuals will discount. As a matter of fact, those in a second or a third position, they're really vulnerable because if the bank in the first position takes the property back at auction, guess what? Those in a second or a third position, the likelihood of them ever seeing a dime is almost a big fat zero. Anybody who has a lien on the property, any judgments, IRS tax liens, most title issues, they can all be cleared up if you know how to go in and negotiate and to help these people see the fact that if this property goes to auction, their interest in the property is going to be wiped out and they're going to get nothing. So wouldn't they rather get a little bit than nothing? So learn how to negotiate with these folks. So back to the seller. Some of the things that'll help you with the seller to be able to strike a deal that makes sense so that they get what they need out of the deal. You could say, listen, I'll offer to rent you a U-Haul truck so that you can move your stuff. You may be able to purchase something that they have for sale. The reason why you want to purchase something from them is because you're going to need to declare to the bank that you didn't give them any kind of compensation. That they received no cash proceeds out of the deal. Well, if you're going to disclose that, then you got to be honest. But that doesn't mean that if they have something of value, you can't buy it. You know, you can purchase something they have for sale and take care of their needs that way. You got to put your creative thinking cap on so that, you know, you're doing things right in ethical and straight up fashion, but that you can also help out the homeowner. Now, there's a lot of debate out there as to whether or not to get the deed on a property. I always say get the deed. Just don't record the deed, right? If you get the deed, then you know you can close on the deal and you have a solid legal standing. You don't want to record the deed because you don't want the bank to see that ownership transferred because they may be thinking, hey, this new owner might come in and actually offer us a better deal, even though that may be you. They want to see that it's a cleaner transaction. So do not record the deed. Go to the title company, you know, put it in escrow and sign docs at the title company and never transfer ownership until the deal is done. Another thing, when dealing with the banks and preparing your short sale package, you want to have a nice cover letter. You want to have bullet points listing out everything that you are sending the bank in the order that the bank has requested. How do you find out that order? Call them. You want to let them know that this is a cash offer, that the seller is not receiving any money from this transaction. And you need to be the contact for the BPO. What's a BPO? It's a broker price opinion. So that if you're the contact, that means that if the bank is going to send somebody out to take a look at that property to determine its value, you want to be there to influence the BPO. Make sure you show up and you're talking to that broker or agent. Rarely do they have actually an appraiser, but sometimes they do. But you want to be there. You want to show up. You want to bring comparables. You want to bring a detailed list of repairs. You want to point out the negative aspects of the property, and you want to state a target price. And the reason why is because even though that broker or that agent or that appraiser, they're going to do their best based on the comparable approach to determine value, you can influence what comps they're looking at so you can really set yourself up with a better buying opportunity, which is a more justifiable offer to the bank. Most folks don't know how this is done, they don't do it, and they leave so much money on the table. Now, short sales come with convincing the seller. So you got to convince the seller that a short sale is in their best interest and that you're the guy that can do it, right? You want to get the deed, compile the offer, contact the bank, influence the BPO, and then you want to set up a time for closing so that you can close quickly. Short sales are such a wonderful opportunity for you to get a great deal. Let me show you this quick example. In this example, let's say that we've got a mortgage of $260,000. We got a market value of $225,000. Do you see the problem? That's right, you got a negative equity position of $35,000 right out of the gate. You're going to come in and you're going to do some of the things that I've suggested to be able to present a really solid, justifiable, backed up with documentation offer to the bank. they view the wholesale purchase price of $150,000 as reasonable. You're going to buy it for $150,000. Now, in this example, that leaves plenty of room on the table for a profit. Let's say you got to put $5,000 into this property for repairs, but you turn around and you sell it under market value for $195,000. That means you take $40,000 profit, cold hard cash at closing, put it in your pocket. It's a beautiful thing. And if you do this transaction without using any of your own money, any of your own credit, your return on investment is infinite. Now that we've talked about short sales and some of the great opportunities that are available to you there, let's talk about private and public auctions. Private and public auctions. First of all, you need to know the steps to success. You want to take a look at the trustee sites to determine the viability of auction success in your area. What's that going to tell you? If you're looking at the trustee sites or you're looking at what properties are going to the bank versus going to a third-party purchaser at auction, you'll be able to determine whether auction success in your area is viable. That's what I mean by that. If all the properties are going back to the bank, that means nobody's able to buy the dang things at auction, so don't waste your time. But if they are, you want to research your homes. You want to research the homes that you wish to purchase at auction so you know your numbers and you know what the home looks like. You want to follow the property through to auction, meaning you start with it while it's still in foreclosure and you follow it through to the auction date, and then you want to put your poker face on as you go to the auction. You never want to share information with other investors because they'll use that information against you. Set your limit. Set your limit. Don't get caught up in the emotion of the whole thing. If you think that you need to buy it at this so that you can sell it at this or realize that gain in equity if it's a buy and hold, do not move beyond your price. One of my early on mentors taught me this about real estate. He says, listen, Bob, the deal of the decade comes along about once a week when you're looking for it. And then make sure if you're buying at auction, make absolutely sure that you are buying the first mortgage out, not a second, not a lien, not a judgment. Because if you do that, oh, you could really find yourself in a tough, tough spot. So some of the steps to success when you're buying an REO property from the bank directly, well, you know what? You got to have your money lined up right out of the gate because just like at an auction, it's a cash sale. When you're buying an REO, well, most of the time you're going to be able to get the good deals because it's a cash purchase, right? So have your money lined up. Also, check the trustee websites. Find out what's going on out there and where these properties are going so that you can start contacting the banks that have large inventories or contacting the bank's REO broker so that you can build a relationship with them. The next thing you want to do is you want to be able to make justifiable offers. Justifiable offers. And always keep your word. Close quickly and make it happen. Now, again, when we go back to the OP everything principle that we've talked about so many times in this training, I want to refer to one individual that has had a tremendous amount of success and I respect immensely for what he did in business. Andrew Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie was the wealthiest individual in the world during his day and age. But he became wealthy not because he knew how to do everything. Napoleon Hill said of Andrew Carnegie that he surrounded himself with people that could do all the things that he could not do. Again, in real estate, you want to lead it. You don't have to do it. Just get the knowledge so you know how it's supposed to be done and then assemble and build your team of individuals so that the end result is the same, if not better, because you've got the time to go do deals rather than always working or fixing deals. It comes down to specialized education. I mean, it really does. Specialized education. I want to impress something upon you. This little cash flow quadrant here that's displayed, some of you may have seen that. Robert Kiyosaki was pretty much the author of this program, and he did a great job in explaining, you know, that the E is for employee, the S is for self-employed, the B is for business owners, and the I is for investors. If you're on the B and I side of the quadrant, well, then you own a business and you invest. That's where the wealthy live and play. If you're there, it leverages time by having money work for you. If you're on the E and the S side of the quadrant, that means you waste time working for money. That means you either got a job or you bought a job. And that can be incredibly frustrating for you. Renatus has developed an educational system to teach you how to become business owners and investors. Traditional education simply teaches you how to get a job or buy a job. That's it. See what I'm talking about? And how becoming your own boss, and then taking the proceeds from the business that you have and putting those into real estate can pay off in a big way, I'd love to introduce you to Dr. Gary and Sylvia Lawrence, because these guys are such great examples of what can happen when you take the knowledge that you're given and apply it towards real estate. Let's listen to them now.
Hi, I'm Gary Lawrence, and this is my wife, Sylvia. And we retired after a 25-year career with our marriage and family counseling clinic in May of '03. I had been a live radio talk show host for 20 years. And 6 weeks after retired, I uncovered the fact that we had already lost 60% of our retirement portfolio in the '01 stock crash. Now, I was 59 years old, and when I uncovered that news, I kind of went into a pity party mode. I'm sure you can identify that. Most of us have had a pity party at a time or two. But anyway, the problem is I stayed in that mode for 5 years. I look back now and I call it my 5-year valley of inertia. And I woke up and I was 64 years old, and I hadn't done anything to replace that retirement portfolio. And literally, I was facing bankruptcy and foreclosure at the age of 64. Well, I was introduced to Renatus, the real estate investing education program, and I embraced it 100%. Got laser focused and learned how to become a real estate investor through the educational program. And Sylvia and I, we filed bankruptcy in February of '09. Our house went to auction in July of '09. I mean, we lost everything. But I stayed focused because of the educators and the system. I was able to do that. And to make a long story short, last year in 2010, I was able to generate just under $200,000 as a result of the real estate investing deals I learned to do, and also as a result of marketing and education itself. And I'm just so grateful for the restoration that Sylvia and I have experienced as a result of this wonderful Renatus program.
You know, I absolutely love listening to that story. I mean, it's powerful, it's impactful. This is about a couple of individuals who, in their 60s, when they should be looking forward to the golden years, had to start over. Now, that's becoming more of a reality for more and more people. So you'll relate to this story because they found Renatus, and through the educational system, they were able to learn what's necessary so that they could go forward and start doing transactions, start operating a business profitably, and now they're in the driver's seat making more money than they've ever realized before in their entire lives. That's where I feel an enormous sense of gratitude and contribution. It's all about that feeling of contribution that really helps to drive me, because I want to make sure that what I've learned over the years doesn't just live and die with me. I can pass it on, and it can take on a life of its own. Well, in our third training, because you've gone through 2, now we're going to move forward into number 3. We're going to be really drilling down a little bit more on creative acquisition strategies, but more so on how do you find the money to make all of this happen? How do you find the money to do the deals? I'm going to show you 13 different ways to go out there and find the money so that you can do real estate transactions all day long. We're going to talk about creative acquisitions again, but how to construct the deal, the sources of funds, the sources that will be the resources you need to go out there and make things happen. And then we're going to move forward into showing you exactly how to be in business for yourself. I'm going to teach you about business plans. I'm going to teach you how to do a SWOT analysis. I'm going to teach you a lot of really great stuff. This third training is where we kind of wrap it all up. So far, I've been laying the groundwork to show you how to be financially free in the next 5 to 7 years. This next training, I'm going to really build on that, but I'm also going to teach you how to make at least 6 figures in the next 12 months. I'll see you over there on the other side.